Hi guys, it's Matt here from Matt Smith Goaltending, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about stick control. I find that goaltenders are struggling at all levels of hockey, including the National Hockey League all the way down to minor hockey, with being able to control pucks with their stick. It's becoming kind of a common trend where goalies just rely on their pads, and it's becoming somewhat of a lost art, being able to control pucks with their stick. So today I'm going to kind of go over the primary factors on why goaltenders have struggled with their stick recently, and I think the first is stick size. A lot of goalies have a stick that's probably the paddle's a little bit too big. The second is the angle of the stick, both from a standing position perspective, and on top of that, how they're actually moving to pucks with their stick blade. And the third is the hands going backwards. So we talked a little bit about negative movement in prior segments. And this is a common theme that we see with the goalies. They have negative movement with their hands, which means they're coming backwards before they actually go to the route of the puck. So it's all about patience and being able to control our hands a little bit more effectively. Those are the three primary kind of problems that I see. We'll focus on the stick length of the paddle a little bit later. But the two things that are under our control from a technical perspective is being able to angle the stick properly. The first thing that I see most commonly is goaltenders with too steep of an angle of their stick, or their stick being too flat, one of the two things. If the stick's too flat, what you're doing is you're relying a lot on your arms to be able to make the save. And if the stick is too angled, what you're relying on is swinging your paddle, because when you angle your stick in a steep way, so meaning a very steep angle of the blade, what happens is all the weight actually goes to the paddle. And that's what you're trying to move instead of the actual blade. The lightest part of the stick is the blade. So we want to be able to try and keep a pretty good angle. So you can see here Jet is in net. He actually has a pretty good angle of the stick. You can see kind of where the angle lies. And for me, that's a pretty good angle to start. It's just slightly tilted. And primarily a large portion of the blade is on the ice. We want to try to get the entire blade on the ice, because then the pressure of the stick is right through the middle of the blade. So if you don't feel pressure on the middle of your blade, we know that you're probably not going to have an effective stick. Now this could happen in a variety of different ways. A lot of goaltenders, what they'll do is they'll sink into their stance. So they start with a pretty good stance, and then as the release happens, they start to sink down and get lower with their body, which in turn causes the stick angle to angle either straight or it angles it a little bit more on a steeper angle. The other issue that we see with stick angle and why a lot of the pressure goes to the paddle and the weight goes to the paddle of the stick is because when the goalie drops, their blocker and hands come down. So I'll show you kind of a little bit of a drop here. So this is just a shot. This is a kind of a staged shot. So hopefully Jet doesn't do this in a game, but we were trying to stage it so that we could kind of use it as an example in this video. But here's a low shot along the ice. You can see that when Jet starts to move, he actually moves in a pretty good route. But as he drops down, you can see that the blocker hand starts to sink towards the ice. Okay, so what that causes is a deeper angle with the stick. Right, so when that happens, all the weight comes through the actual paddle of the stick, and then he starts swinging. You can see his hands kind of just swing at the puck, right, instead of having control. So you can see that that stick blade isn't effective because he's swinging, and the large portion of the stick, the biggest part of the stick, is really doing a lot of the work. And that's what I primarily see. That's just kind of a quick little piece of advice from what I see with a lot of goalies. Another issue, and we tried to incorporate both in this video, is goaltenders will come back with their elbow first. So this is the second factor. The second primary issue is the goalie will go backwards with their elbow. So you can see on this replay, Jet actually comes backwards with his hands. So his blocker and his elbow come back. And then what happens is then that forces him to take a funny route. And that's kind of the final issue that I see a lot of goalies having trouble with, is we want to try and make it the most direct route. So if I draw a semicircle in front of Jet, you can see that for him to move on a direct route and angle that puck to the corner, he needs a small little movement to be able to go directly to there. Now, if he decides to go backwards and then over, it's a much longer route. So we want to intercept the puck in front of us if possible, as much as possible. So we don't want to bring our hands back. I find that happens a lot on the blocker side. Reason being is we have a lot more weight on that side because we actually have our stick. And you see more issues just simply because it's a little more obvious. When you mess up on the blocker side, it's really obvious because there's usually a bad rebound. If you make a mistake going towards the glove side with the stick, you can make an error and still control the puck, but it doesn't necessarily mean you actually controlled it. It was just kind of a little bit of luck. On the blocker side, it's really hard to get away with that. So a lot of goalies, what they do to manufacture this rebound is they'll come backwards with their hands, and they take basically two routes, and that's pretty simple to see. So see on this replay, Jet goes back with his elbow and then comes out, and that's what kind of misses the stick. Now he's doing this on purpose, or at least trying to. He's trying to do his best to stage it for you guys to see, so you can see visually. But a lot of goalies do this naturally to kind of help themselves get the puck to the corner. I think a lot of this is based around goalies worried about deflecting the puck in their own net. But remember, when shooters supply enough power, that puck's going to ramp kind of out this way, out of play, and be really effective as far as a rebound goes. We want to try and put that puck out of play, versus if we bring our hands backwards, we're actually impacting the shot less, and we're allowing that rebound to come out to a greater area, and that causes a lot of problems as well. I think if we think about it from a perspective of, if we get the puck to the right part of the stick, it's going to allow us to angle that puck out of play. And the final thing is, when we bring our hands back, a lot of times because we're behind with our routes, what ends up happening is we get it on the wrong part of the stick. So we end up getting it on the toe part of the stick, because you can see when Jet goes backwards, what he has to do is drastically kind of rotate his blade towards the puck. And when that happens, you can see the angle of the stick is more this way instead of on an angle this way. We want it to be a little bit more square to the actual shot, and we want the player to actually provide the power. When we do that, a lot of times it comes off the toe part of the stick, and you can see that there's an opening available. Sometimes the rebound kind of pops up and then comes back down. We want to try to control with actually the heel portion of the stick generally, because that's where most of our power comes from. And if it hits the heel part of the stick, there's only a guarantee of the puck going this way and out of play. If we get it with the toe portion of the stick, it's really unreliable and there's no strength there. So what I would try to focus on primarily to improve this in your game is, number one, focus on making sure that everything stays square to start, but make sure that there's a good angle of the stick, and you maintain that solid angle all the way through to get a solid power off the stick blade. The second aspect and a big key is also making sure that our hands take the right route. So we want to be really direct with our stick to where we want to travel to. We don't want to come back and then over with that stick blade. And if you do those two things, you're already going to have a little bit more success. There's obviously a ton of other factors that go into this save, but those are the two main factors that I'm seeing quite frequently. And that's probably a primary part of your issue. The effective way to do it is look at the stance first and not allow the body to sink, and make sure when we're actually using that stick that the angles aren't changing on you. And if you do that, you'll have ultimately a lot more success with your stick, and you'll start putting more pucks out of play and get more whistles, and obviously control the speed and pace of the game. Thanks, guys. Hopefully this helps. I look forward to sharing more and more tips with you guys. But that's kind of the primary one that I'm seeing with the stick. Thanks, guys.